Sorry, Carlton King, the former Scotland Yard Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in a jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for free.
My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy Podcast, the show that shines a light on the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations, but actually majors in on geopolitics. This week, we're looking at part 2 of the programme I started last week, obviously, with Fergus, in which we actually were speaking about what makes the police the body that controls people, and what happens if people have basically had enough of what's going on and wish to change the system. Should it be allowed? What can be done and what can't be done? And is the world fair? So let's continue with this very wide-ranging discussion, and you'll see where we end up. But I'm keen to get you guys, you listeners, on board and to contact us. Tell us what you think. Tell us how you think the world is. Tell us how you think we should be discussing about the world and how we may be educating you whilst, of course, entertaining you at the same time. So without further ado, let's go back to the discussion with Fergus.
So Carlton, let me ask you this, right? How does the police view anarchists?
Actual anarchist. Now, it's definitional. An anarchist has a definition. Yeah, an anarchist wants no government, etc., etc., etc. So there's a definition there. So if you've got a real anarchist who is actually going to take some action to overthrow or undermine the powers that be, then clearly that is an offence. It's the offence is subversion.
But hang on. It's not an offence to it's not an offence to strike, and it's not an offence to protest.
Correct.
So where does the offence come?
Presently, striking no, you're missing the point. Right, subversion is, and I'm going to be definitional here.
No,
where you overthrow, where you attempt to overthrow or undermine parliamentary democracy by non-parliamentary means. So that's the actual definition. So when you ask me about anarchy and people trying to overthrow, I'm working within the definition. Striking is not part of it. You can strike all day long. You have the absolute right to strike until they change the law. Like they do with the police, who cannot. But you have the absolute right to withhold your favour.
Let's just be granular about this. Let's just be granular about this, right? If I'm pissed off and I go out and I support the local nurses, I'm on strike.
Nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No,
if I go out on a protest march, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right, depends. You see, when I'm saying there's nothing wrong with it, because we're going to have to be granular on this.
Let's be super granular. So at what point do I become an anarchist? That's what I'm asking.
Right, well, an anarchism has a specific political meaning. That's what I'm saying. And in anarchism, there is no leadership. You do not follow any system. So that's a different system. So, and it's of the left, but it's kind of not of the left, if you get anything. But so anarchy's that way. If you go in the other direction, you can see National Socialism, which is basically socialism in one state, so Nazis, yeah? Socialism in one state. But basically it's right-wing in orientation. You can be both of them, frankly, right? The problem is when you're putting into action something which you're doing in order to overthrow the state by non-parliamentary means. Now, you can do, or by means where you carrying out industrialized activity to overthrow the state in a non-parliamentary means. Now, if you're just striking for the hell you want to strike, that's down to you. You can withhold your labour. Even under these new laws, which I think is absolutely outrageous that they're trying to bring in to say people can't strike and have to have a certain amount of cover, etc., 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 right? That's coming along the line whereby if you don't define what the cover is, it might be at such a level put in place by government where they might say you have to have 99% of everybody, all nurses working before you can, so only 1% of nurses can be out on a strike. Well, how can you then strike? How can you withhold your labour if it's illegal for you to do so? Right? Now, the thing is, again, with illegality, is what is the penalty for that illegality? It might be that you can be fired from your job. It might be, but you can't be imprisoned. It might be that you can be fined, but you can't be imprisoned. Or it might be that you can be imprisoned. So you've got to look at what it is. The problem for the police is they sit in the middle. The police basically uphold the laws that are made by the state under the correct judicial process. That's all they're doing. So as long as it's made a law, and everybody in Parliament sat down, the government has proposed it, it's gone through Parliament, because you know you've got the executive, which is the government, so they're proposing the laws. It then goes to the representatives in Parliament, who then say, yeah, we'll have that. It then becomes a judicial statute, and then the police uphold that law. That's all they're doing. So they don't have a choice. I've been on things I think I don't like this, but I'm upholding the law of the land as it is. Right, that becomes problematic, and if it comes to such a state whereby the law of the land is so vulgar that you couldn't uphold it, you'd leave the job. You'd say, I'm leaving. But then, of course, you're out of work, and you become an outlaw.
Okay. No, I'll just pause you there because, again, I ask these questions, right? So if the police can't strike, how do you display your discontent?
You can't. There was a tactical move that they tried back in the, you got these police community service individuals. They were brought in by David Blunkett. And the reality, and I knew him at the time, and the reality of it was, and I said to David, I see what you're doing, my friend. You're bringing these in as strike breakers. Right? Police can't strike. Obviously, these guys can. But if the police, because what they started to do in the late 90s, was a kind of work to rule. So you couldn't say they were striking, but they'd say, I'm going to work only the days that I'm scheduled to work. So because when something happens and you need police, what happens is they're working overtime or whatever they're doing to bring them in. And you're changing the days around to come in and work, etc., robbing Peter to pay Paul. Well, in most police forces, if you don't do that, they'll come to a standstill. So some of the people are thinking, well, if we work to rule, i.e., then they can't say we're striking in any way. We're just taking our leave as you normally would do, because that's what, we're regulated. We've got leave. We can take it. So you'd end up with nobody working on a weekend or whatever it might be, or outside of a shift pattern. So if you bring another body in now, another set of people in who are not police, but can act a bit like police, because when they see the uniform, people think they're police. You've always got that body there that can function even if police worked to rule, because as I said to you, clearly police cannot strike. So it shows that system up. And this is a Labour guy who brought this in, by the way. He'll tell you it's something different.
Absolutely. No, I know.
And I like the fellow, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to argue, I like him.
So let's put this the other way, right? Let's say there was an uprising tomorrow.
What do you mean? An uprising or a riot? What are you talking about? Or is it the same?
Well, let's take them both as individual things. What would the police power be to shut them down?
Well, police look, if you obstruct the highway Right, see what you've got to look at. This is, yeah, I was going to go on to that and I didn't do. Remember the Sir Everard demonstration? Right?
Yeah.
Right, so police were able to move people away from that demonstration because it was an emergency power, which was duly run through Parliament, that said for the duration of the pandemic, that people were not allowed to come together in numbers. So it was illegal. So the moment it's illegal, police have got all the powers in the world to deal with that issue. It's illegal. End of story. Right? There's also the sessional order, which says you can't demonstrate in front of Parliament at the time when Parliament's sitting. Example, that's an order, sessional order. It's illegal to do that. So you can move people away. You know, if you block the Queen's Highway, the Queen's Thoroughfare, it's called in the old laws, it's illegal.
To pause you quickly, again, for the benefit of your listeners, when you say move people away, do you mean quite literally?
You can be arrested. You can be moved away.
Yeah, exactly.
And generally they do.
You mean you've got the power to arrest them, right?
Yeah. Generally they move them away because you've got to figure it this way. If you start arresting everybody, you've got no police left because you take them into the police station and you arrest them. So generally they want to just move people away, move out of the way, and then you've still got the policeman there, or the policewoman there. If you're taking every person back to the police station who you're nicking, you soon run out of soldiers.
You run out of cells. Yeah, exactly.
No, out of soldiers. What I call them, I mean police. You generally run out of police. We call it. You run out of your box of soldiers. You won't have any more police left. So you've got to work on these issues as to how you can make that happen. So there's the Kesselin movement, which is now being used quite a lot, where you encircle people in the police and hold them for a period of time. That then allows you not to have to arrest them, but you can just keep them there because they've done an illegal act. Laws came out under Labour, by the way, which basically said you had to give notification of demonstrations, right? If you didn't, the demonstration was illegal. And once it's illegal, then police have got all actions that they can take, depending on what it is, what they think is necessary. Because what you've got to look at is operational policing is down to the police. So how they carry it out is down to them. But the law is clear and they should uphold the law. That's what they're there to do. So there's no problem upholding the law when it's illegal. And just something as simple as with these guys you get now of sitting on the M25 or any of the King's thoroughfares is illegal. End of story, because you're blocking it. It's an illegal act. So right there, you can be arrested. You can be summoned if not arrested. You can be, you probably go to the magistrate court and they'll probably turn around at the end of the magistrate's court and say 10 quid fine or 50 quid fine or whatever. But the magistrate can give you send you to a Crown Court and then you can get much, much more than that. So all the police do is bring you and put you in front of a court. That's all the police are doing. And in fact, that's being watered down in many ways now because you've got this other body called the Crown Prosecution Service now. So the police know what their powers are and 1,001 different powers. There's still legislation, and people won't believe this, that says a London taxi cab has to have hay in it. It's just not been repealed. The act hasn't been repealed. So theoretically,
awesome. I'm going to demand hay.
Theoretically, you could go to the cabbie and say, right, you've got no hay in there, mate. You're committing an offence. Boom. Nobody does that.
You're supposed to be able to herd sheep on Hampstead Heath as well, I believe.
Yeah, all that sort of stuff. Absolutely. So the reality of the situation is that there are laws that have not been repealed, but or there are bylaws in a particular area, etc., etc., etc. Or in the Metropolitan Police, there are metropolitan police laws specific to London, etc., etc., etc. So what I'm saying is the police have a lot of powers to do things that generally don't use all their powers, because they're trying to work within the system. And by the way, this old chestnut of, our police are unarmed, so they police by consent. It's total and utter nonsense. Listen, every police polices by consent. I don't care what country you're in. Because the reality is, if you do not police by consent, you can't control, because there's never enough police to stop all the public. Never is. So there's an element of consent. It might even be that it's only 70% of the population consent to the process, and the other 30% don't. Or let's make it even 49 to 51. Generally, it's not that. But the reality is that most police by consent, and many of the countries I've been to, they police by greater consent than we do in the United Kingdom, to be fair. So it's nothing to do with arms. It's nothing to do with. It's to do with the sentiment of the people. It's to do with the media not calling the police down. If you have a supportive media for police, actually the police.
I think you called it earlier. It's to do with it. It's to do with the Bank of England, really, isn't it? It's to do with the you know, to do with the sort of British economy, you know, we wouldn't be if you were to define a utopia that was in a much less fragile state, it would be about everyone having an equilibrium in terms of money.
It would be. Yeah, it would be. It would be. Now, I know, and you know, that if you give everybody in your street the same amount of money and came back a year later, that everybody would be at a different level. We both know that. And theoretically, I guess, that was the problem with pure communism. So what you got then, if you want to look at on that sphere...
And also, like, you know, if you want to bring the media into it, that's also the problem with the lottery. Like, it is the problem with communism, but it was historically the problem with communism. But also, like, you know, I mean, I don't know, there's probably a stat on this, but I'm going to hypothesize and say like about 65% of lottery winners are desperately unhappy or like whatever, because the money hasn't made them happy. It's just taken.
It may well be the case. You know, I would never attempt to say that was not true, because you're probably spot on. Because it's a mindset, isn't it? It's a mindset. It's that they've been used to living a life in a certain fashion, and now all of a sudden they've got a lottery win, and the mates who were mates, now they don't know why they're their mate, because they're now thinking, is he my mate now because I've got a load of money? And then when for the first time he or she says, oh, can you lend me 1,000 for a car, and you say no, the resentment that might come in, or 10,000, or buy me a car,
or you know, or just to you know, to even circle back to your world, or then suddenly they need to spend a lot on security systems,
absolutely,
or bodyguards,
absolutely.
or whatever, you know.
And then, who does he think he is? Who does she think she is? All of a sudden, she don't speak to us anymore. Now she's done that. You know, you can see it, can't you? So you're absolutely right. Give everybody the same, and it doesn't mean they'll be the same.
My stepdad swears by every time he leaves the house, like my mum and my stepdad, I mean, honestly, they're in their 70s, but honestly, every time they leave the house, I mean, obviously they do lock the house, but they leave, like, on the table in the hallway, they leave a £20 note. And they leave a note saying, "Don't rob us, just take the £20."
Interesting. Well, it's an interesting philosophy.
My parents had died in the war, old anarchists. You know, like they protested till the end of the earth. But
they weren't anarchists, though, were they? They may have been communists. They may have been socialists, because communism and socialism.
Okay, right.
But they weren't. Anarchism is different.
I don't know how they define themselves, but okay. So my mum, well, yeah, like I say, I mean, I grew up. I spent a lot of time on Greenham Common, like, you know.
Nothing wrong with that.
They were left-wing protesters, I suppose. But anyway, when they leave the house, I mean, yeah, they lock the door and everything. But
and again. Greenham Common, you mentioned that. Were they wrong?
On the table every time, just there, with a note saying, "Please don't rob us, just take the £20."
But Fergus, this is beautiful. Were they wrong? Were they wrong to basically question the deployment of nuclear missiles in Great Britain? They probably weren't. Was what they were doing illegal? Cutting into wires to get into the thing. Yes, they've carried out illegal acts. So the police act on the illegal act. Was every police officer happy with the fact who dealt with them, he or she who dealt with them? Were they happy with the fact that they were, locking these people up now and then? But look at it the other side. In my game now, you've got to see that obviously you placing those weapons in Greenham Common and wherever else, and then putting them there, and those actions would have been supported by the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, and probably funded by the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact to prevent those weapons from being there. So this is the bigger picture. This is where we widen out.
Me and my brother and my mum, like, we lived on Greenham Common for about a year.
Right,
in a tent.
Yeah.
So all I remember was it rained every day and it was so
absolutely.
muddy and it was horrible.
But it shows your belief, and that's great.
I hate well my mum's belief.
Oh, your mum's belief. Sorry.
I was about 4, right? Yeah. I just remember though that the main protest that all the mums had was that they used to pin tea towels to the fence every day.
Right.
And I used to literally sit there like eye rolling, going like, oh my god, like what difference is that going to make?
Yeah, exactly. But is your mum? But you see, but this is the reality of it though. For your mum to be in her defence, and believe me, I understand the fact that was the Soviet and the Warsaw Pact were carrying out their actions, because we were doing exactly the same in the other direction, in the Eastern Bloc. So let's not make ourselves out one better than the other, because this is a Cold War and everybody was fighting that war.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, I was literally.
So we'd have been supporting the other side. You see what I'm saying? We'd have been supporting those in Poland who would be demonstrating. Now, the point I'm going to make is this though: your mother and people like her on both sides, they were seeing the potential destruction of Europe. And the reason why I'm mentioning Europe like that, not because I think Europe's better than anywhere else and shouldn't be destroyed, but because what you need to understand is when you had it as a continental interballistic missiles from a continental perspective, then there was at least X amount of minutes where decisions could be made when if a rocket was fired or if it was incorrectly fired or perceived to have been fired. But every night when people went to bed in those years that you had those intermediate and short range nuclear missiles actually on land in Europe facing each other, the springtime was about 2 minutes. There was no time to make any decision as to whether it was right or wrong. So if a mistake was made, the whole of this continent could be blown to bits and then thereafter the world within 2 minutes, because you didn't know that it was a mistake. Now, I'll leave you with this because the time's come up. There was a colonel, a Soviet colonel, who actually was in charge of, it was his shift time, when he was in charge of the equivalent of the American system that sits under the mountain in NORAD, right? So he's in charge of this, and he's looking at the Soviet screens, and all the screens are there, and he can see all the ballistic missiles theirs, and he can perceive where the US's are, Britain's are, and France's are. And all of a sudden, this is a fact, it's not a thing, it's an absolute fact, all of a sudden, he saw ballistic missiles coming across from the United States, luckily, from the United States. And he thought, bloody hell, it's the attack, it's on, right? So he tries to get onto the phones to Moscow, attack coming in, and he looked at it and he thought, and the orders were dead simple. You know those attacks are coming through, you've got to fire ours off. They've got to go. Standing orders, right? They're there. And he didn't do it. And then all of a sudden, all the missiles that were coming at Mother Russia and the Soviet and the Warsaw Pact all disappeared. And it was a fault on the system. He was hailed as a hero for about a week, and then after he was arrested for not carrying out orders, because they then feared that if the real thing happened, some other guy would think, well, no, I'm not going to fire the missiles off because it might not be real. That's how close you were to nuclear war, to destruction of the world. So I understand your mother at Greenham Common.
No, but do you know what? To circle back to the Prince Harry book, I mean, I know I was being a bit flippant about the chapter where he talks about how he fucked up and misread a coordinate and then ended up bombing his own people. But there's lots of things that he fessed up with. And again, I know we need to round this off because as always, we've gone over time. But I'm going to make a suggestion for your listeners for 2023 for all of this, for this podcast, which is that we suggest that there's something that they think about to take away, because I know we have some fans and they report on the things that they've enjoyed about our chats. And I feel like maybe we should turn this into a positive. Maybe we should ask people to think about something that they can take away.
Absolutely. Totally with you.
From this podcast. So I my one, you can do your one, right? But my one is, what are your geopolitical fears? And please message them because we can discuss.
Yep.
And I'm going to take 2 because I'm greedy.
Nothing wrong with greed. Oh, maybe there is.
Because I'm greedy. Because I'm greedy. Also, if anyone else has gotten, I'm on chapter 40 on the Harry book. So if anyone else wants to talk to me about the Harry book, well, you're welcome.
Yeah, brilliant. Let them speak to you. Fantastic. I like that because then you can bring it back in the next one. I'll tell you what mine was, and I've just mentioned it. I think we are in a dangerous place with the war in the Ukraine. I've revised my position because it's gone on so long and because we're now starting to talk about bringing up battlefield weapons closer to Western Europe again. So from both sides, targeting from both sides. And same with Harry, and I've not read it. You say he makes a mistake in his coordination. That Russian guy, that colonel, who frankly saved the world, but then paid a price for saving the world, would another one make that same decision? Or if it looked as though Mother Russia now, no longer the Soviet Union, Mother Russia was under attack, would that person say, we fire ours now as well? I think we get into a dangerous situation when we have weapons so close to each other that there's no thinking time. That's my fear. The other, I'll do 2 like you.
Carson, actually, like, again, to circle back to the Prince Harry book, and you can edit this out if you want, but
no, I won't do.
But right, there is a bit in there when he says that the Americans, when he was in Afghanistan, the Americans had told him that he could only have some minor level bombs.
Mm-hmm.
They'd only cleared him for minor level bombs, and he wanted to have a major level bomb.
Okay.
And so what actually happened was he was only maiming the Taliban.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I can't say that. I'll have to read it. I will read it. You know, I'm gonna.
What he was seeing was, and he also, there's another interesting story that you will have an interesting steer on, which was that the Taliban realized that he was there.
Yep.
And they sent a maimed child in a wheelchair up, or not in a wheelchair, in a wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
But they'd maimed him.
Yeah.
Right. They sent him maimed up there so that Harry was there sorting out the medical crew.
Yeah.
And because he was there sorting out the medical crew, they knew that he was going to be there, so they bombed him.
I can see it. War's a dirty thing. It's a very dirty thing.
But all these things, I just sort of think, he's actually being 100% honest.
Absolutely, of course he is. Yeah, absolutely. I've got my own experiences of that. Now, we were going to have to close, but I'll leave it with one other thing because you had 2. I'm going to demand 2 as well. You know what my second one is? We're not there yet, but my second one is making autonomous vehicles weapons of war. I'm talking about now.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Because the problem there is that it will start to consider itself rather than the orders that humans want to give it. And I think that's very, very dangerous. I don't know how far way off we are. I know that they're trying to work on these autonomous, because the military is always the first to these things. This is very, very dangerous. Making machinery more capable than human beings. Maybe we'll talk about that one day.
Yeah, let's talk about this because there's a lot about AI in automated capacity and all the rest of it. And yeah, I mean, I think it's quite interesting because sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong.
Agreed.
If we were to have a debate about this, like, who rules the world of AI? Who?
There you go.
So,
There you go.
Who,
There you go.
who,
I mean, I know I said I'd
who is
close.
the,
I know
who
I
is
said
the
I'd close it
political
off.
ruler? Who is the geopolitical ruler of AI?
There
Of
you
those
go.
bots?
Who knows? Who knows? Because my suggestion is, and this is my own suggestion, if you become a sentient being, you know they're all working on making sentient beings. That's what they're all working on right now as we speak. I know this as a fact because I've been speaking with people who are in these fields. They are making sentient beings. Now, even if you're doing it out with the military field, the military are going to pick it up because it has to, because it's hey, you know, why wouldn't you? You've got now, if you make a being sentient based on the perspective of a human, because that's what they're using. They're using a human perspective and they're putting it into a machine. Okay? What's the first thing a human being does? And I'll tell you, you know,
Cries.
Yeah, cries. Why?
Because that's the first emotion that they can express.
Why does it cry though?
Because they want to express their own position in the world.
And then what comes thereafter?
Love.
But it comes thereafter to feed itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right? So it cries sometimes to say, I want food. Then it comes to its mother, I want food, and it cries to want food. And when it starts growing up, becoming more and more capable, and I'm talking very young now, what is it like in the first instance?
Are you talking about a robot or a human?
No, I'm talking about a human. What is a human like in the first instance? Because I'll give you a simple word. I'll say it's selfish. The human in the first instance wants you, demands you, wants everything from you, and wants to look after itself. It does not want to share. In the first instance, we control it to share.
And this is 100% a conversation that you used to have with Dr. Rachel, the neuropsychologist.
Super.
Honestly, she'd love. She said to me earlier today, she said she'd love to do a chat with you.
We'll get her on. Because I'm telling you now, my fear is you create that sentient artificial being, and the number one thing it's going to want to do is protect itself. You try switching that thing off, and it will soon learn actually that it's smarter than we are, that it can compute information quicker than we can. Because that's the reason why we're creating it. So it will know very soon afterwards that it can compute information X amount of times quicker than we can, you know, millions of times quicker than we can, that it's much more capable than we are. If you then automate that, I mean, that's just a hide. I can't see how people aren't seeing this. It's so ultra dangerous. I just don't believe that we're even trying to create it. You know.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and like I say, it's very, very, very much the next episode that you need to pick up with Dr. Rachel. Very much.
Let's get Doc on. Dr. Rachel, if you're listening.
I introduced.
I guess she's not an American.
I showed you on email earlier. So.
Right. Okay. Let's get her on, Sidekick. We need her on because I wanted to. She's working in that fit. I want to ask her these questions. Why are we creating this? You know, is it because and I'll end because I said I would do. I might have to make it 2 episodes. But looking at automobiles, right? One of the first things they look at in an automobile that they're trying to make self-driving is they're trying to put into the automobile now decision-making processes.
Well, we'll go back, like Carlton, go back to what I said at the start of this thing, right? If you were just a random person, right? Let's say back in the days of the guy that made the nail bomb, you'd be buying a holdall, some nails.
Yeah.
What else would you be buying? I mean,
you get your anarchist holdall. Yeah, we don't want to tell people how to make bombs.
We're not telling people how to make
bombs, so let's leave that out.
We're not telling people how to make a nail bomb, but all I'm saying is, like, you could buy all these things, right?
Yeah.
Right? If in 10 years' time you could buy a robot that could just go out and do that job for you.
Correct. Absolutely, Kira. Absolutely. If it just took a bit of reprogramming and that thing would do everything that you want it to do, or more importantly, do what it wants to do, what then?
But then what does it want to do?
Well, this is the question, isn't it? What do you program into it? What do you program into it? See, this is the big problem. What do you program into that machine? Do we know what we're programming into these machines? Have people in the world sat down and said, oh, well, we want you to only program this, and this into the machine? No, we haven't, have we? So somebody's making a decision about what they're programming into the machine that we've got zero control over.
Exactly, and so at what point do we need a sort of geopolicing that is a astro?
I don't think you get it. You know why you don't get it? Because it's about making money in the first instance, and in the first instance, these people are making money. These people will. What was it called? Deep Blue, the machine that beat the top chess player.
Yeah. Well, even like Elon Musk's kid.
Musk, right? Exactly. Musk is frightened of it. Musk is like me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but do you know what I mean? Like, who? Okay, it's you've got sort of geopolitics, but then is there actually like astropolitics or whatever you call it?
Well, I hear what you're saying because Musk wants to go to Mars, but the reality is this, and I know why you're saying it, because what you're saying is a private company, Elon Musk, is creating a potential system that he can take people whom he chooses to Mars and create a new colony, asking nobody.
But let's say right, okay. I mean, this is another episode. Honestly, this is honestly another episode. I'm just spitballing really, but like, let's say when those people get to Mars, who's in charge?
Musk, I imagine.
And so then what are the
rules? Muskites? This is the problem, isn't it? These are the things we're not dealing with.
And then who polices it?
Musk's police. They'll be called
Musk
police,
cope,
won't they?
And then if there's a riot.
Well, I guess they do cope. I guess they just work to Musk. Whatever Musk tells them, they do, because Musk will be then the new power. Musk will be the power that they think is the correct power at that moment. That's not new. This is like remember, India was first taken by the East India Company, not by the British Crown. Right? The West India Company took the West Indies. The private companies have done this forever and a day.
I love that you're comparing. I genuinely love that you're comparing like colonializing Mars to India.
Yeah, same difference, isn't it? Same difference at the end of the day.
It really is.
But they were robber barons. These guys went out, they bumped off who they needed to bump off, and took as much money as they could, because they knew that was their only chance of making money. So they joined the East India Company, heard it was great, took local wives, whether they were enforced to do that, is probably the case, and took areas of land for themselves, and etc., etc., etc. And then in the end, at one stage, apparently the East India Company had like 100,000 soldiers. I mean, it's incredible.
I love that you're making this comparison. I think it's brilliant. I think this is a whole nother conversation, but I mean, but it's awesome.
It's frightening.
Frightening. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. And even
because I'm going to leave you with this. When I was during my time in Iraq, the whole time I was there from 2003 all the way through, intermittently backwards and forwards all the time, till we moved out. They had in America a private company, Blackwater, right, flying Apache helicopters, A-10 Warthog Thunderbolts, right? I mean, these are massive weapons of war. It's a private company. It's incredible. A private company, not the US Army now, not the US military, a private company. This is unbelievable what they were doing. Rimmer, who was the guy who ran Iraq afterwards, after General Garner. When I was first, it was General Garner was doing it. After General Garner moved, they put him in charge. He had not the US military protecting him, but this private army protecting him, with their own helicopters, with their own gunships. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. They had so much military hardware. I mean, this is the problem when you let it get out of hand. Right? And why? The argument was that who cares if these guys get killed? If a US soldier gets killed, the president's got a right to the family and say, well, you know, we lost another soldier today, and the figures come on the news. That if some private guy earning 100 grand gets killed, right? Who cares? He's earning 100 grand. He went out there and knew what the problems were. So that's why they use these private armies. But they were a law to themselves, mate. I've been with these fellas. They were a law to themselves. Literally a law to themselves.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean,
Crazy.
It's actually crazy, but also I think I think you know, again, this is another episode. B, you know, it's
We've got to call it
exponentially crazy. Like what's crazier, the cultural threat in a whole new world versus like, you know, the cultural threat tomorrow because everyone's pissed off.
Absolutely.
But I'm just going to round this up because I know
we have to.
What I want to say is I would hope that 2023 listeners can make it their resolution to join us.
Yes.
And I think that you and I should make it our resolution to empower them with knowledge. I
agree. I totally agree with you.
So to give them something to take away from every podcast.
Yeah.
So let's do like a virtual high five and say we're pledged to do that.
High five's gone in for me. Gone in. Gone in.
Amazing. What we're gonna do, like people, we are gonna like, I've learned so much from Carlton and I want everybody else to learn, you know. But we're gonna do this in a real way. All right.
Agreed.
So happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year, Carlton, and yeah.
Happy New Year to you, Fergus. Thank you very much. And hopefully I will see you guys next week, and Happy New Year.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence.